What's up guys, this is jimmyduraide from the BTS lab. Today I'm introducing a new format for the lab, which is going to be a Q&A format. So basically how it's going to work is that twice a month we're going to be taking a couple questions from our social media pages, so either our Love the Spot, Facebook or YouTube section, and then we're going to be answering them. So if you're interested in us answering your questions, make sure that you write them in the comments on either of our social media pages. Before going to the Q&A section, if you haven't heard of the BTS lab yet, I would strongly suggest that you visit our website. All the details for the lab is in there. There's also a special code for this month, which is Road to 10K, because we just reached the 10K subscribers mark recently, which is going to give you $10 discount for the first month, and then you'll have access to the webinar this month as well. All right, now let's dig into the questions that I selected. So basically I chose 3 questions that I thought was interesting and that I also saw that they were coming quite frequently. So the first question that I'm going to answer from some of our users, he was basically saying, how many hands do you need to play before moving up in stakes? So basically, like, this is a common theme where people are not really sure at what point when they should be moving up, what win rate do they need to have in order to be moving up, how many buy-ins and all that type of stuff. So I mean, we can talk about it and try to answer that question on a deeper level, where there's a lot of factors that you need to consider when you move up. First of all, your overall win rate. That's one of the biggest factors, in the sense that, like, if you know you are a winner in the games you're playing or in the games higher, that means that you can potentially take some more aggressive shots. Also, what type of bankroll do you have? How many buy-ins do you have for this limit? How many buy-ins for the other limit do you have? Those are important aspects as well. Also, some of you guys have a daily job who are working 40 hours a week, right? So you have a side income, you have money aside. So even if you lose, I don't know, you have $1,000 bankroll for 25 NL, even let's say you lose that bankroll, it's no problem for you to be reloading some money on the side and then just keep grinding. Some of you guys don't have that luxury, so if you lose that bankroll, that means that you need to go back to 5 NL or 2 NL, which is really not what we want to do. So like, you have to take a look into all those factors, like how comfortable are you moving up? Is it the first time you're actually doing it? The amount of buy-ins and all that type of stuff. One of the typical mistakes I see from people is that I personally did that when I was trying to move up the stakes. So I remember when I was playing 50 NL and I was shot taking 100, I had many fail shots there. That was before joining BTS. One of the main reason, like, I wasn't able to actually move up is that, like, whenever I was deciding, okay, now I'm gonna try to shot take at 100, I was taking, I don't know, like 4 to 8 buy-ins, and then I was telling myself that, okay, now I'm moving up, I'm gonna be only a 100 NL player. So the thing that happened is that if the games were good, I was playing. If the games were okay, I was playing. And if the games were bad, I was playing. But at that time, at that particular time, I probably was not good enough to beat those games when the games were really bad. So basically what happened is that, in my mind, is that I was only playing 100 all the time until I lose those 4 to 8 buy-ins. But I think that's a pretty big mistake. Because first of all, let's say you're moving up the stakes, that means that you're basically doubling the amount that you're playing for, which for some people it's quite not scary, but it's more uncomfortable. So basically I think a better approach is to just gradually putting more and more volume into the higher stakes. So basically when you're trying to move up, let's say from 50 to 100, don't go and play your regular like 4 table of Zoom and just go up and tell yourself, okay, now I'm playing 100 only and all that. Just start off with, okay, I'm playing 2 table of Zoom, 100. You take a look into the games, you take a look into the player pool, how much different is it, how the players playing, are they more aggressive, what's kind of different between the 2 stakes. Once you get more and more comfortable playing the higher stakes, you see that it's not that different, you feel confident and you feel in control, then it makes a lot sense to gradually more and more be going into the higher stakes instead of playing the 50 NL. So even like if you're shot taking, you could still play like 2 tables of 50 and 2 tables of 100. And then let's say in a week or 2, everything goes to plan, you feel super confident, then you add a 3rd table and then you add another 4th table. Also by playing at the higher stakes, you can identify the best times to play. So I mean, if you're shot taking, maybe doing your first couple sessions during the weekend, on Friday night, Saturday, when the traffic is much better, instead of going in when the pool is pretty bad or might not be good enough for you to beat it. So we have to take all of those into account when moving up. And I think that that was one of the biggest mistakes I personally did, that when I was actually shot taking, that I definitely recommend you guys to not do. Also, a lot of people, basically the question is how many hands to move up. So basically it really depends. If you have a solid win rate, your bankroll is comfortable, I wouldn't spend too much time at, let's say, 5 or 10 NL. The rake is really high. So if you're waiting for like 300k hands sample to actually move up, I think it's a bit of a mistake, in the sense that if you have a pretty solid win rate, you're confident in your game, I would try to shot take aggressively. You don't need to take like 20 buy-ins to the higher limit. You can take something like 4 to 8 or 6 to 8 buy-ins or 10 buy-ins and apply the strategy that I just talked about. And then if you run good at the beginning, good for you, because that means that you're just going to stick with the higher limit and then you're going to put some volume there and potentially just move up a bit faster. If you take like 300, 400k hands at like 10 NL, the thing is that you might, the rake is super high. Also, you might be running pretty bad. And variance hit you for 150k hands, so you're just going to be losing a lot of your time at the lower limits when you could potentially be playing higher with less rake with a similar win rate, which will make you more money. So I don't think it's really about how many hands, it's really about your bankroll. Can you reload if you lose a decent part of your bankroll? If not, we have to be a bit more careful, right? And you have to stick with a pretty solid bankroll management. Like something like 40, 50 buy-ins, I think is fine for micros. It also depends on the personality of each. Some people are more aggressive in terms of their bankroll, so they don't care if they have like 30, 40 buy-ins. Some other people like to have like 100 buy-ins. I think like having 100 buy-ins for micro stakes is kind of overdoing it, because you're just gonna, like I just mentioned, you're gonna spend so much time just building that bankroll that you might be making more money if you move up with less rake and all of that. So I think that if you are confident, your bankroll is allows you to move up, you feel comfortable in your game, you have a decent win rate at the stakes you are playing, just take a shot at the higher stakes. I mean, if you have a sample of 20k hands, 25k hands, I mean, that's absolutely nothing. But like if you have 150k hands and you're winning at a decent win rate, and you check all of those things that I just mentioned, I would definitely try to take a shot. If it doesn't work, you move back down, you rebuild, and you redo it until you actually stick this time, and then you have successfully moved up. Now let's take a look into the second question, which is about opening raise sizes. So one of the user asked, what should be the perfect opening size as the PFR? And first of all, we're going to take a look into the early position. So basically from EP or middle position, we think that like there's going to be multiple strategies that make sense, but as far as BTS goes, we definitely advocate to use a smaller raise size from the earlier position. So either you're from EP or middle position, something like 2.1 to 2.2x, we think that makes a lot of sense. And one of the basic reason for that is that when we are early position, there's still many players left to act. So basically, like especially in lower games, you know, like in micro stakes game, there's going to be some cold calling going on from the middle position, cutoff or button. So basically what happens is that you get sometimes 3-way to the flop, then the pot is pretty big, you're out of position. So this is not just a great recipe for success. So what you want to do is you want to try to keep the pot as small as possible, because there's a likely chance that you'll get to play the pot out of position. So from those positions specifically, so EP and middle position, something from 2.1 to 2.2x is definitely something that we would recommend. Also, one of the reasons is that when you are actually facing 3-bets, the sizings will also be smaller. So if you open to something like 3x from EP, when you're going to be facing a 3-bet, I mean, you're going to be facing a much larger 3-bet than if you open something like 2.1, or you should be. Some people don't have static 3-bet sizing, but yes, that's it. Like in general, when you open smaller, people tend to 3-bet a bit smaller, so it's a bit easier for you because the pot is smaller. It's going to be harder for the in position guy to put all the money in 3-bet pots and all that type of stuff. So from EP and middle position, we definitely advocate a smaller raise sizing, so 2.1 to 2.2. And then from a bit later position, so as far as the cutoff, I mean, we can go something like 2.2 to 2.5, I think is totally reasonable. Again, there's less chance for you to be playing the pot out of position and be playing the pot against the big blind, which is great because that's what we want to be doing. So opening a bit slightly bigger is totally fine. And then on the button, we definitely advocate opening a bit bigger. So something like 2.5x we think makes a lot of sense. And the reason behind it is that we want to be playing a big pot in position. So those are the type of situations where it can have a really big impact on your win rate. So if you're playing the button versus big blind spots really well, and you can put the big blind into really tough spots and be really aggressive, those are the kind of spots that can drastically affect your win rate. So building a bigger pot, we can put him into tougher situations, and also we can play pretty well because we're in position. Now let's take a look into the small blind. So now, yes, we're going to be out of position, but the thing is that now there's only one player left to act, and also he invested already one big blind. So if we open really small, we're basically giving him such a great price to defend, and that's not what we want to do. So basically, we're going to be raising a strong range, and also, I mean, versus the really, really good guy that we cannot be opening super wide, we're going to be opening a stronger range. But opening something like 3x, 3.1x, I think is totally fine. We don't want to be raising like 2.2x and give him like just tremendous odds to actually defend pretty much a big part of his range. So basically we size up, and then so to something like 3x or 3.1. I even see some guys opening 3.5, which I think is okay if you open the right range. But I mean, now just opening smaller doesn't really work well anymore. So we want to be sizing up a bit, give him a worse price on the call because he already has money invested, and also he doesn't have to worry about players left to act, and he's always going to be in position. And yeah, and that covers all the preflop raises, sizes as the PFR. And now let's get into the third question. Some user ask, and it's a question that comes up super often as well. The question is basically why the solver actually likes over betting on the turn. Why does it like betting so big on the turn? And this is something that I'm actually gonna go a bit deeper into my webinar for this month. But if we talk about some general ideas about it, is that one of the reasons that solvers really like some overbets on the turn is that on the flop, there's going to be many situations, as you guys know, that we are incentivized to use high frequency, small sizing c-bet strategy. So if we take a look into, let's say, a board like button versus big blind, and the board is ace, 8, deuce, rainbow. It's a board that is super good for us. I mean, we're gonna have all the higher top pairs, so all the good toppers and all the good top pairs, top pair, top kicker. So we're gonna have like some hands, some really strong hand that he's not gonna have. So in general, our range wants to bet at a really high frequency and for a small sizing. The thing that happens is that in that range, there's gonna be some hands that wants to bet small, that wants to bet big. So for example, if you have a hand like pocket deuces on ace, 8, deuce, it's a super strong hand. It doesn't block any top pairs that villain can have. It would like to bet bigger than 1/3 pot. There are also some hands that in that range that wanted to bet on the larger side and on the smaller side, I mean. So if you have a hand like, I don't know, ace 3, you know, you have a good top pair but not great. I mean, that hand doesn't want to really bet huge. But in terms of our overall range, the smaller sizing makes a lot more sense than the bigger sizing. So what happens on that turn is that when you take the value part of your range, which is a strong top pair, right? So you have something like ace jack or ace 10 plus, you have 2 pairs and sets. All those hands wanted to bet more than 1/3 pot on the flop. So basically what happens on the turn is that on ace 8 deuce turn, for example 6, it's a spot where we're not going to be betting at a really high frequency. We already see bet at a high frequency on the flop, so we basically see bet our entire range on the flop. So basically what happens is that on the turn, we're gonna be betting a more polarized range, and we're gonna be using some strong top pairs as the bottom of our value range. So we're gonna be betting something like, I don't know, ace 10 plus, and that range is pretty narrow and tight, and all that value range actually lost value on the flop and wants to get back that value on the turn. So we want to size up and we want to bet big, and it's using an overbet. Sometimes it's using a 150, sometimes it's using 175. It really depends on the situation, but the general idea behind the overbetting strategy is that on the flop, when you're using a full range strategy, for example, there's the top value part of your range actually missed out on some value on the flop, so it wants to get back that value on the turn. Hence we want to use a slightly bigger sizing, and we use a pot size bet or overbet strategy on the turn. So hope you guys enjoyed this video with the questions I covered. If you like the video, just make sure that you subscribe to the page. Also, don't forget that if you visit the site for the BTS Lab, there's a special coupon. It's Road to 10K. Again, you're gonna get $10 off your first month. And if you ever want some of your questions answered in the later months, make sure you write them down onto our social media pages, And other than that, I'm just going to wish you guys good luck and see you next time.